Hi, I'm David. Welcome to LeisureBit. Today I'll run you through the upgrade I've done to my in-van Wi-Fi and mobile internet solution, where I've upgraded to a professional, or as some call it, a prosumer model, and I've also upgraded the MiFi aerial or antenna too. We'll be fitting the pointing aerial and the GL-X3000 router, and we will find out if these are the perfect pair. I installed it back in August. However, before I created this video, I wanted to make sure I'd used it and to see what a difference, if any, it's made. The reason I decided to upgrade was from a trip we did in the summer. A few places we struggled with a mobile internet connection, particularly where the coverage was a bit patchy. Sometimes it's handy where you can go to the pub to upload a video or do a bit of work. It can still be a faff, especially when it's raining. This should be a choice and not a solution to connectivity. We needed something better, with less faff in patchy coverage areas. I'll run you through how I narrowed down through research my top choices through to what I ultimately chose to purchase and why. I'll explain how I installed the new aerial and the new router, and of course how it's been performing in comparison to the previous router over the past few months. And finally, whether it was all worth it and if it's made the difference I was hoping. This is something I've purchased myself with my own money, and it's not sponsored in any way. If you watch for a while, you'll know this will be my third iteration of mobile internet, and this time I've decided to go prosumer. Originally I had installed on the van a 4G 5G roof mounted aerial and used it with a 4G Huawei E5785 router, which worked really well. The only drawback was it only supported 4G rather than 5G, which is the future. Last year I upgraded the router to a ZTE MU5001, which does support 5G. Check out the links in the description to the previous videos if you want to know more about those. The ZTE MU5001 worked fine for a while, but like many routers with TS9 connectors, if you plug and unplug them a few times, you can find the work a little bit loose and the connection's not as good as it previously was. So I found the signal wasn't as good as the Huawei router I previously used. If you know any other reason why the signal may have degraded, let us know in the comments. When there was a strong 5G signal, it worked a treat with some impressive throughput. Where the signal wasn't so strong, you could struggle to get a decent connection and sometimes end up with no connection at all. We particularly noticed this when we were away on a trip this summer. The router was also very basic and lacked any of the advanced features. For a 5G router though, it was the cheapest I could find. I did buy it second hand, so I can't really complain too much. After researching a number of 5G routers, I shortlisted it to the Teltonika RUT-X50 5G router and the GL.iNet GL-X3000 Spitz AX router. That's a mouthful. Both of these had the features which I was looking for. 4G and 5G support, good reviews, well built and robust. Can be run from the 12 volt power in the van, the ability to support dual SIM as a failover, and also SMA rather than the TS9 connections for the aerials for that robust connection. Wi-Fi repeating, that's something that the Huawei had previously but the ZTE didn't, and I wanted it to be highly configurable and also upgradable. I preferred the look of the Teltonika as it looked really robust, and I've previously used Teltonika industrial routers in the past for other connectivity and they've been good. When I looked at pictures and videos of the GL-X3000, it looked very plasticky, therefore I wasn't sure it was going to be robust. I'd also spotted that there was quite a few reviews of the GL-X3000 on YouTube, which did make me wonder. I did further research just to be absolutely certain. These things aren't cheap. At £300 plus for the routers, you want a good product which is going to be reliable and warrant that level of investment. There were a couple of features the GL-X3000 had over and above the RUT X50 router. Firstly, the GL-X3000 supported Wi-Fi 6, whereas the RUT X50 only supported Wi-Fi 5. In most cases, this wouldn't make a jot of difference. It does, however, mean it's more up to date with standards and therefore compatibility. And who knows when things start getting withdrawn or where speeds start getting capped because you haven't got the most up-to-date features. Secondly, there's a feature which I can't foresee using it very often, but experienced from the past when we had a holiday home in a mobile hotspot, it was invaluable. In this case, it enabled me to connect to a 4G rather than the 2G mast, which then enabled data connectivity and the internet to work properly. Further to this, it allows you to lock to a very specific mast as well, which could be helpful in areas of fringe coverage with overlapping masts, where otherwise it would be unreliable in that situation. Price-wise, in real terms, there was a difference, but it wasn't massive. The GL-X3000 was advertised at £489, but then heavily discounted to around £320 to £350. The RUT X50 varied between just under £400 and £500. So at the time, the discounted GL-X3000 was at least £50 cheaper than the RUT X50. After a lot of consideration, decision was made on the GL-X3000, and the saving of £50 came in handy as it can go towards the aerial. But this was about getting the right device to give reliable internet connection and not about cutting corners with the cost. Next, I needed to find a suitable aerial, as the one I had was just a 2-connection one. The router needed 4 connections as it supported multiple input and multiple output technology. So what's that all about? Here's the tech bit. MIMO's a wireless technology that uses multiple aerials or antennas at both the transmitter and receiver end to improve communication performance. By sending and receiving multiple data streams simultaneously, MIMO enhances the capacity and reliability of wireless networks, providing faster internet speeds. On cellular or mobile networks, it's used as a key technology in 4G, LTE and 5G networks, enhancing the performance and capacity of mobile communications. So back to the aerial. I looked at several 4G and 5G aerials which would work with the routers and narrowed down to a couple of options. The first one was POYNTING. I researched and read the specs and reviews for which performed the best. I also wanted a multi-feature, so narrowed down to the 7-in-1. The second was Teltonika, which again had 4 mobile LTE, 2 Wi-Fi MIMO and a GPS aerial. Both had the same capabilities. The POYNTING MIMO 417 aerial, which was a 7-in-1, was around £230 and the Teltonika was around £100. After studying the technical specification in detail and reading reviews, I decided to go for the POYNTING MIMO 417. Despite being more than twice as much, the whole purpose of the upgrade was to get a better signal and performance, so skimping on the aerial and having to replace it again would make no sense. So I ordered the POYNTING aerial 7-in-1, the GPS aerial connection spare and connect to another device such as my CCTV. Hopefully I had found the perfect pair. Before we move on to the fitting, if this is something you're thinking of purchasing, I did notice some potential scams, especially on one of the routers where it was advertised at a too good to be true price. Sure enough, on checking it out, it did look to be a scam, so only buy from reputable suppliers. As a general rule, I've found if it seems too good to be true, it probably is, and no one wants a nasty surprise, do we? So just be careful. Anyway, let's get on with the job. If you don't have an aerial to remove like I did, it's typically a case of drilling an appropriate sized hole in the right place on your van, checking of course before you do it to make sure you don't cause any damage, and then sealing it. There were some really useful instructions included that had the information on all the different types of mountings and also the size of holes to drill and further information on there. This video isn't about drilling holes in your van and all of that. There's plenty of videos out there and instructions that can help. So top marks to POYNTING for those. For me though, removing the old aerial was a bit of a pain. It was stuck in with silicone adhesive, so it took some time to remove. After cleaning up the roof and removing the excess silicone, it was great that the hole was already in the roof and it fit perfectly, so that saved a job too. If you're fitting from scratch, don't forget to double check before drilling holes. Measure many times, drill once. I did put some primer in the hole so it doesn't rust and cleaned it up a bit. Let that dry and then dropped the cables through. In an ideal world, you would put a nut on the back of the aerial, but I chose just to stick it down. It wasn't worth dismantling half of the van to be able to put a nut on the end of it. The previous installation there hadn't got a nut on either, and the sealant sticks it down really well. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. If you do have access though, it definitely would make sense to fit the nut. When fitting, I put a very small length of U aluminium where the sealant would bridge the dip in the van roof. As I'd noticed on the previous aerial, water would pool up around there as it couldn't flow backwards or forwards along the ridge in the van. So I added this to allow the water to drain from the back to the front or the front to the back, which hopefully stops things pooling around the groove. That seems to be working. On the aerial, the cables are quite long, around 2 meters I believe, and I only really needed about ½ meter. So rather than cutting and re-terminating, which would have been a pain, I fastened the excess cable on the roof on the inside of the cupboard. It's a bit of a pain to get it neatly as the wire just wants to do its own thing. That enables the router to be easily relocated if required in the future. The router came with a mains power supply, so before installing the router, I tested it to make sure the aerial and the router worked as expected. All good. The router comes with a bracket for mounting, which you can screw on or fix with adhesive. I chose to install it with heavy duty Velcro, as I found that works well. I've also managed to remove it, generally without causing any damage, and it also gives it a little bit of padding. I'm not a massive fan of installing electronics in the overhead locker, as I've found it can get quite warm in there when the sun's beating down on the van, and it can result in overheating. It is one to watch if you have a battery in your router. This one doesn't, but I have found that the temperatures can exceed the safe temperatures for lithium batteries in the lockers. Say no more. However, this router doesn't have a battery in it, so hopefully it will be okay and not overheat. If there is a problem with overheating, I can subsequently move it out of the locker, as I haven't shortened the cables, and that will enable me to do that. As standard, the van had a switch 12 volt when you turned the Campervan power supply onto the locker. I'd previously run a 12 volt permanent supply to the locker, as I wanted the router on pretty much all of the time, so things such as the Serbo GX and CCTV have permanent connectivity is required. If you don't have either lots of solar or a large battery, I wouldn't suggest having it set up and be on all of the time. It would be more practical to have it switched on when the habitation power is switched on, a bit like how I originally had it set up, as there is a parasitic drain when the router and anything else is running. Whilst it doesn't seem a lot, if you consume an amp per hour for a week, that's 168 amp hour capacity if there's nothing topping it up. Worth considering if you really need it permanently powering before connecting it up. Connecting it up was straightforward. Simply connect the 12 volt to the DC input, connect the 4 MIMO LTE connections, 2 Wi-Fi connections, which are labelled Wi-Fi. 1, 2, 3, 4 LTE and 1, 2 Wi-Fi and the power. Worth noting, for the Wi-Fi you need to use a gender reverser, which is included as the connections on the router are male and the aerial are male. The GPS connection from the aerial I fastened out of the way for now, and I'll use that in a future project, as the GL-X3000 doesn't have a GPS input. I popped a SIM card in from my old router. Worth noting, you can put 2 SIM cards in, and if one of them doesn't have a signal or it isn't working, you can set it to switch to the other SIM card. I then clipped the router into the bracket, tidied up the wires, and then switched it on. Setup was straightforward enough, and it was all up and running fairly quickly. Worth noting that even though this is a prosumer professional router, it's still pretty good at getting up and running. Don't let the professional features put you off. It was easy to set up are not over complex. Yes, you can delve into a lot of complex settings and details and additional features, but to get it up and running was pretty straightforward. I noticed a difference straight away in terms of signal and performance. I've been using the router and the aerial upgrade since August 2024. Over the past few months, I've seen a marked improvement in areas with weaker signal, and have tried in some places where I struggled previously to get a signal without any issue. With improved signal, throughput and stability of the connection, as you would expect. For me, it's important to have a good connection, as it enables me to do things and go places I wouldn't be able to go without a reliable internet connection. Clearly, sometimes you just want to relax and switch off and not go anywhere near the internet, which is absolutely fine. It doesn't stop you doing that. If you need it, it's there. It also made things even more convenient, meaning now, more times, things just work. Whether you want to catch up on YouTube, stream your favourite TV show, or ask Alexa to tell you a joke.
What do you call a dinosaur fart? A blast from the past.
Dear me. Or play your favourite tunes, or even catch up on your work or emails. Personally, for me, yes, it absolutely was, as it's made a significant difference, allowing connectivity where previously it would have been unreliable or not usable. It's also removed faff, and anything which removes faff allows you to enjoy your van more and make the most of your time away rather than trying to fix connectivity issues. Ultimately though, it depends on how important internet connectivity is to you when you're out and about. I'd love to get your thoughts and comments. Do you think I've made the right choice? Have you tried the RUT X50 or the Teltonica Aerial? Let us know in the comments, and if you're watching this, don't forget to check the comments, because there's lots more you can learn from other people beyond just my experience, and also any other recommendations. Given the faff and hassle it caused while we were away with connectivity issues in the summer, I went one step further and also got a Starlink in an effort to ensure I don't get caught out with connectivity again. Or at least that was the theory anyway. Watch this space to learn more about that. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when that one's out, and also any other videos we do. Oh, and before anyone asks, no, I haven't won the lottery, albeit I think I need to. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful, and I will catch you for the next bit.